My ex-wife and I adopted our son when he was 6. We had been his foster parents for 3 years, and we wanted to make it official. Then I met his wife when he was 18. She knew he was adopted, and she thought it would be good for him to get to know his biological parents. And over the course of the next few years, my ex-wife and I were slowly pushed out of his life. When they got married, we only received a wedding invitation. We were not part of the wedding party, and his biological parents and their spouses sat at the family table. We have not had the opportunity to meet our granddaughter either, and she's nearly 3 years old now. I am sad about the situation, but my ex-wife is heartbroken. I hate to see her hurt, when all she did was try and be a good mom. I can honestly say that I am not a fan of my daughter-in-law, and I wish she had never come into our lives. Recently, they have run into financial problems and they lost their home. My son's job is in the city we live in, and his biological parents and his in-laws all live in other cities. So, he called my ex-wife to ask if they could stay with us while they got back on their feet. I said no, my ex-wife wants to, but I refuse to be used. He has been distancing himself from us for 9 years now, and the only reason he called was because he is desperate. I don't think I owe him anything, but I did offer to pay for whatever it costs for him to move his family to the cities where his real family is. His wife called me to scream at me, saying that I'm abandoning my son and grandchild. I just said that since he didn't think of us as parents when they got married and had a child, then they should not think of it that way now. Then I blocked her. My ex-wife says that I'm being too harsh and that I need to forgive them. But here's the thing, I don't think it will change anything. All that will happen is that they live in our home and then they abandon my wife again as soon as the chance presents itself. Edit. He was removed from his biological parents because they were very young and it wasn't a good situation. If they had been older or more stable, I'm sure they would not have severed their parental rights. To make it clearer, his mom and I are divorced. She is in an extended care facility and he cannot live there. I kept our home, and I'm still friends with her and we see the kids together as a family. I still care for her deeply, but her condition wasn't something she wanted me to deal with. Our son didn't even know we had separated when he called her. Now for the top comments. Info. Over the course of the next few years, my wife and I were slowly pushed out of his life. Why? You raised him for 15 years. Did you have a good relationship with him? I thought we did. I have racked my brain trying to understand what happened, and the only thing I can think of at all is that his biological parents are the same race as him and his wife. This reply kind of makes me feel you treated him as a different race than you. The only reason you can think of is the same race? Not anything else? I'm sorry, I don't quite believe that. His behaviors are screaming trauma without help. Now maybe that trauma came from when he was placed into foster care and just never got dealt with. Or maybe it came from your time with him, but I highly doubt it's only because of race. We raise him along with other foster kids and our own biological children, all of whom we see on a regular basis. While our biological children are white, our other foster kids are all not. Not the a-hole. He has been pushing you away for 9 years for his BioParents. He's clearly indicated you are not his parents. He doesn't get to randomly come back and majorly disrupt your lives because he's in a bad position now. He would 100% be using you and his wife. Sounds awful. You were more than generous to offer to pay for them to relocate. I understand your wife wanting to bring him back, but sounds like he has no remorse over how he has treated y'all for almost a decade. It doesn't matter. He and wife weren't good enough to be treated like parents for the past 9 years. They're not good enough now either. He can go and ask his BioParents. After all, they're the ones who had a post at the wedding as parents. Well, now they can actually do something for their son, given that they let Opie and wife raise him, and only came back when he was a grown-up to reap what they didn't sow. People like Opie's son are the reason why so many people refuse to adopt. Of course it matters. No one can force Opie to house them as they are adults. But understanding if there was a reason that a kid pulled away makes a different take to the story. He said in a comment that he and son are of different race, and that wife and son are the same race. So the son is a racist who pulled away because his parents were the wrong race. No, I do not believe that he is racist. Also, my wife and I are of European stock. His biological parents are not. His wife is very proud of her race and was instrumental in reconnecting him with his biological parents. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my best friend/sister-in-law the true reason for my divorce? I, 32 female, met my sister-in-law, Mary, 32 female, in uni. We were assigned flatmates who really enjoyed cooking and baking together and became best friends. She actually introduced me to her brother John, 35 male, whom I dated and eventually married 8 years ago. We have 2 kids aged 3 and 5. Mary was thrilled for us. She had a close relationship with John and remained best friends with me. John is very intelligent and a bit competitive in nature, so he naturally went into an intense career field. Unfortunately, he turned towards alcoholism to cope with an intense job. He started seeing a therapist to help him identify his triggers. He drank less, and then he quit therapy thinking he was fixed, only to start drinking more again after a while. He did the find a therapist, control his drinking, quit therapy process 4 times over 5 years. Each time he'd make promises and agreements. We had 2 kids along the way. The first was before I realized how serious the drinking problem was, and the second after he agreed to quit completely and get fully sober. He went back on that promise and said he wanted to be in control of his drinking and only have 1 to 2 drinks a week. He never got completely sober. He'd flake out on promises to the kids and me. He'd go out with friends who encouraged him to drink and have 2 to 3 drinks and then start buying bottles of vodka and gin again. After the 3rd time he quit therapy, I gave him an ultimatum. Either get sober or I was leaving him and taking the kids, and I followed through with it. Mary and I stayed best friends after college, but John asked me to keep his drinking from his sister the first time around. I didn't want her to think he had a problem. He was my husband, so I agreed if he worked on staying sober. So when I divorced him, it appeared out of the blue to Mary and their parents, who couldn't understand why I would up and leave her brother and adamantly take the kids, only letting him have visitation. Mary blamed me for the divorce and wanted to end our friendship. So I told her the truth, that I loved him and still do, but I wasn't willing to spend the rest of my life and ruin my kids' childhood, setting ourselves up for disappointment over and over again when he wouldn't stay in therapy or stay sober. Mary was horrified after I told her about everything. She got very emotional when I admitted to her how many times I let myself get excited for plans her brother made with me or the kids, only to be flaked on when her brother poured himself a drink after work. She then went to give John a piece of her mind and asked him to get his act together. John's now extremely upset at me for spilling a secret that I'd promised to keep, because Mary's image of him is now rubbish and his parents are disappointed in him too. I think I had a right to explain myself to my best friend, that I no longer had a promise to keep after he broke his end of it. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Your image shouldn't be rubbish because he's embarrassed by his actions. Thank you. He's extra upset because the most recent weekend he went to Mary's place for dinner and she gave him a sobriety check before letting him in, and he feels like I made Mary treat him like a child when he'd always been her older brother. I was admittedly unsympathetic, but that made it even worse. The only one that made his sister treat him like a child is him. Alcoholism sucks, and having family members that are addicts and alcoholics suck. But it is and will always be their choice to pick up the bottle or the other drugs. Not the a-hole. What did your ex-husband expect? That you would take the blame for the divorce that happened because of his actions? To keep his reputation clean? What has he done to deserve that? No, you shouldn't be expected to keep such a secret for him. Not the a-hole. You did not deserve to lose a friend over the consequences your ex-husband chose. Also, though, true alcoholism is a progressive disease. It may one day help this man, the father of your children, that his family knows what is going on with him. It is not your job to enable your ex, and protecting the secret is a big form of enabling. I hope your ex will one day be able to attain sobriety. Go in peace. Next story. Am I the a-hole for loudly calling a woman a creep when she wouldn't leave me alone while I waited for my daughter? I'm a single dad to 3 kids and my youngest is 6 female. My ex's parents sent her money for her birthday, so I took her to the outlet store so she could pick out what she wanted. I'm used to gawking and suspicious stares when I'm out with my kids. When we got to the outlet, she had to use the restroom. The family restroom was occupied and she really had to go, so I sent her into the ladies' room. I waited right outside of the doorway, just a little off to the side so I couldn't see in when the door opened but would be right there when she came out. While I'm waiting, a woman had come up, gave me an odd stare and asked why I was just standing outside of the ladies' restroom. I explained I was waiting for my daughter to come out, and she offered to go inside and watch her. I declined because I have had one too many negative experiences with people who said they meant well, only to try getting my kids to admit I was kidnapping them, sneak them out to safety, and the like. That nonsense gets exhausting, though I understand their intentions are good. She asks why not? Where's their mother? What's my daughter's name? What does she look like? Giving me this whole shakedown. So I get fed up and loudly go, "Lady, stop trying to creep on my kid in the restrooms." I got her to leave me alone and she left. My kid came out, we went to the store she wanted, got her a bear maid, and went to pick up my other 2 kids. I aired my frustration about the incident and similar ones to my parents. My father got a kick out of it, but my mother felt like I shouldn't have done it. And embarrassing the woman like that was a step too far when she was trying to look out for my kid, so I should have just answered her questions. Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. Fathers are parents too. And taking little girls into a men's room with urinals is not a good choice. She asked why you were hanging outside a lady's toilet. You answered once, and that was enough. Forget the urinals. It's the finding a stall that hasn't been wrecked that's the challenge. I have had to take her into the men's room before, and guys were pretty good to clear out ASAP so I could go in. As a woman who has used a men's stall clubbing, I can honestly say the women's bathrooms are sometimes way worse than the men's. Women's bathrooms aren't necessarily cleaner. But I do understand your pain. My brother is a single dad 50% of the time, and it felt like this when his daughter was younger. It's so sad that men are made to feel creepy with little girls. You're just a dad. It's not creepy. You told her you were waiting for your daughter. That's enough. After that, she should have just moved on. But you also know when you're feeling judged. She has zero right to keep asking questions. You're a big boy, and if you wanted her to check on your kid, you would ask. Not the a-hole. Honestly, the truth is there are some kids in these bad situations, and they do need help from a stranger. It does happen. But the flip side is, if a stranger does know your kid's name, they can use that to abduct your kid. That happens too. So as a parent, you're well within your right to tell anyone to screw off, jog on, and leave your kid alone. Not the a-hole, but I'm curious. Why would you get suspicious stares when you're out with your kids? Being a single parent isn't some weird thing. Being a single dad out with my kids, it's all too common to think I'm ambitious enough to kidnap 3 whole children from their mother. Or I'm babysitting and giving her a day off. The former I kinda understand, because some parents do insane things over custody disputes. This gave me a giggle, because legit 3 whole children and they all casually just follow you around, no questions asked. I fed them once, now they follow me around like stray cats. Last story. Am I the a-hole for not wanting to lie to my son for the sake of family harmony? My parents always wanted grandchildren, and both my brother and I wanted children, but both of us ended up facing fertility issues with our respective partners. My wife and I eventually decided to start working with a surrogate. Our parents are old-fashioned, but they tried to be happy for us. My brother also tried, but his wife did not. His wife is as against the concept of surrogacy as it's possible to be. It always has been. We found a friend who was willing, and we now have a son. Sister-in-law went crazy. She spent months blasting all of us how horrible we all were, that we supported all sorts of terrible practices because we were doing this, etc. She refused to go to our baby shower or see us in the hospital, but she did send a new mom kit meant for our surrogate, with things to help a pregnant person recover from childbirth. My brother apologized for her but said he couldn't change her mind. A few months later, my brother and his wife announced a spontaneous pregnancy after more than 5 years of trying. Our parents were thrilled, and so were we. We were willing to put it all behind us, but they had a daughter, and it only intensified her views. She refused to bring the baby over for holidays or meet her cousin because she refused to have her daughter raised to view women as objects. Years later, she softened to have our parents around at least, without us. Now, my parents want the whole family together again. She's agreed to a compromise that she's willing to do holidays and family outing, as long as we never tell the children that our son is from a surrogate. Our parents think we should do this, because she has a point and they were always uneasy with it. But I don't agree. This isn't some shameful secret that we should be ashamed of. We didn't do anything wrong. My wife is adamant that we shouldn't, but wants our son to have a cousin. My parents are calling me as much as I'll answer, to beg me to consider. My brother just wants the tension to stop and isn't going to fight with her anymore. Not the a-hole. Your sister-in-law can just mind her own business or just get lost. Yep. Your child should come first. And if he later finds out his origins were some dirty little secrets, he's going to feel like he's a dirty little secret. Don't do that to him. The extended family can eat rocks if they think this is a solution. Sister-in-law's flat out crazy. You better believe she's going to make some hateful or belittling comment to your son in the future if she feels this strongly. So do your son a favor and spare him of that. And a likely possibility that if he does make friends with a cousin, it'll be ripped away later when sister-in-law starts in with some other new wild demand. Yes, that's right here. This woman has acted insane over something that's not her business for years. There is no way she's going to bite her tongue when the child, who is the living representative of this thing she unreasonably hates, is in front of her. And even in the unlikely event that she did, she won't do so in front of her child, who will pick up on that attitude and act on it towards Opie's child. Opie ought to cut contact for the sake of their child. Not the a-hole. I guarantee lying to your child about their origins will cause divide in that relationship. What is more important? Sister-in-law and her precious views? Or building an honest and open relationship with your child? Children survive without cousin relationships, and they thrive better without people who don't like their existence because they came in a different way. All of my cousins lived far away from me and I only saw them for a week every few years. Had none since we were in our teens. Children can and do get along fine without being with their cousins. But once a lie is exposed, that's much harder to come back from. Sister-in-law's nuts. The truth is likely to tear the family apart, and sister-in-law will be prompt to blame you. Since no one wants to stand up to her, do not expect support. Sad situation.